At this time of year, we're at the end of Hanukkah, and we're right in the midst of the Advent season. And so the reading today is from the book of Isaiah, from the Old Testament of the Bible. And it portrays a future time when God will redeem and restore God's people. They will return to Jerusalem with songs of joy and gladness. The desert and the parched land will rejoice. The desert will shout with joy, and it will bloom like a crocus. It will bloom and it will shout with joy, joy and joyous song. This dry earth will be given glory and splendor, fruitfulness and abundance, even as God's own glory and splendor are revealed. And the God whose glory they will see is our God. Strengthen the feeble hands, steady the knees that give way to staggering and stumbling. Say to those with fearful hearts, be strong, do not fear. God will come. Then they will be opened, the eyes of the blind, and the ears of the deaf will be opened. Then a lame man will leap like a stag. A silent man's tongue will shout, because waters will break open in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground bubbling springs. Where jackals once lay, grass and reeds will grow. There in the place that once was wilderness, once a place of wandering, will be a raised road. There will be no more wandering and no more danger. The people of God has redeemed and ransomed will walk on it, and they will turn and they will come home. As they walk homeward, upon their head like a canopy, a garland, or a crown, will be a joy not bounded by time. Rejoicing and gladness will meet them on the road. Sorrow and sighing will flee. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me, after having been among you for several months, to be here before you, offering my reflections. And I thank you for having me. I want to thank Peter Morse and Dave Childs for their help in putting the service together as well. And I want to thank you all for making me feel as welcome as you have over these past few months. So I thank you again. This season of Advent is one of my favorite times of the year. The time between Thanksgiving and the beginning of the Christmas season. And Advent always makes me think of home. Now, my paternal grandparents were native Montanans. My maternal grandparents were immigrants from Denmark who settled in the northeast corner of Montana up in an area called Dane Valley now. And that's where they lived the remaining years of their lives. My parents were native Montanans who were born and raised and lived and died in Montana. My brother was born and raised and still lives in Montana. For my grandparents, my parents, and my brother, Montana is and was home. And I have to confess that that sense of home has been very elusive for me. Since meeting my wife in 1982 and moving to Philadelphia so I could be with her, I think we figured out the other night that we've moved 14 times in the last 30 years. And I've seen that a house is not necessarily a home. And a home is not always a building. My family are not a wandering people. I think they've always had a deep desire to be home, to know that they are finally at home. A home is not always a building. Sometimes it is a landscape, as it was for poet and author Wendell Berry, who lived his whole life and is living his entire life as a farmer. His passion for healing the earth is grounded in the extensive experience of farming his Kentucky family's homestead. Now, many Montanans have a similar sense of home, tied profoundly to the landscape, to the mountains, and the rivers, and the tall brown grasses. and the sense of spaciousness and freedom that is there in Montana. Though they may move from one part of Montana or another, or they leave the state altogether, or sometimes even out of Montana, Montana is home. For those of us who move, and for many others, in natural places, places of beauty, the words of author Gary Snyder reveal a deep personal truth. Nature is not a place to visit. It is home. Home is not always a building. Sometimes it is relationships that hold us, that we nurture, who we are with, whom we love, who sees us as whole, who accepts us as we are. Every ongoing relationship has its difficulties, but there are ways of getting through and staying with honesty and patience, with laughter and sacrifice, that we navigate them, ways of caring for each other despite of, and sometimes because of them, that makes relationships an experience at home. Sarah Dessen wrote in her book, What Happened to Goodbye? Home wasn't a set house or a single town on a map. It was wherever the people who loved you were, whenever you were together. Not a place, but a moment, and then another, building on each other. And in this time of virtual communication, sometimes home is, well, what did we talk about last week? Quilts, a patchwork quilt. Because people who love you, those you love, may live anywhere. But you can talk to them and see their faces on Skype or FaceTime or Google Hangouts. And you can send messages in any number of ways. But still, there's nothing like touch, hugs, handshakes, seeing each other up close, face to face, that helps us feel at home. That's why I think soldiers yearn to be at home for Christmas. As Bing Crosby sang in his wartime classic, I'll Be Home for Christmas. That's why students jump on buses and trains and planes to come home for the holidays. It isn't the house that they're mostly seeking, although the house is a place where they may be rooted. The house and their old room may contribute to their sense of home, but it's not really the house. It's the people, it's the family, it's the old friends. And with its last line, if only in my dreams, Crosby's rendition of the song points to a blending of hope and harder truths. The possibility that soldiers will not always find their way home, though it is a yearning and a healing memory in their heart. And it points to the possibility that with deep caring also deep dwells sadness within our homes. If we've lost a loved one, or we're struggling to make ends meet, or our families are otherwise facing difficult challenges, or it evokes the reality that within families where we hope to be safe, some may not feel safe at all. Home is not always a building. Some spend years yearning to come home or find a sense of home. Some wander and wander, creating hope over and over and over again. Some people carry home on their backs. Some don't know where or what home is or what it feels like until suddenly they discover it. In our reading today, we read that people who had been wandering for years in the wilderness finally found home. Do you remember the film Sleepless in Seattle? Tom Hanks played Sam Baldwin, this widower with an 8-year-old son, and his son Cole, this talk show psychologist. He was worried about his dad because he was still grieving and unhappy a year and a half after having lost his wife. The psychologist asked Sam what it was about his wife he loved. You remember what he said? He said, "Oh, It was 1,000 little things, really. But I knew the first time I took her hand to help her out of the car, I knew immediately when our hands touched, I was home. Home is about whose we are, with whom we feel belonging, where we feel welcome and safe. How we are with each other helps create that feeling with friends or family, and we may create that feeling with each other in a nurturing community. I was fortunate to have had that feeling the first time that I sat through a service, which eventually became our home church when I moved from Connecticut from Arizona. A feeling there that in that community with those people, I would be accepted for who I was, with all my doubts and uncertainties. I knew at that time, at least, I was home. And I would venture to say that most of you have that feeling or similar feelings about this place and about these people. I know in these last few months, I have. Maya Angelou wrote, "The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned." So now today is the third Sunday of Advent. Advent means coming toward. It's a journey of time toward the story of the birth of Jesus. This holiday season, that story had always been important to me. And over time, as I've matured in my faith, I've begun to draw on the stories of many other traditions and find meaning for my own life in them as well. Today I remember the journey that Joseph and Mary took, Mary being great with child at that time. They traveled from Nazareth, a town in Galilee, where Joseph was a carpenter, and they went to Bethlehem, where the imperial power required that subjects were to be counted in a census or taxed. And given that so many of the marginalized people in the empire were also going to Bethlehem, Mary and Joseph found no room in the inn. They were temporarily homeless. And still, the innkeeper made room in the stable so they could be warm. And Mary gave birth, and there was love in that stable. That was their home on that night. Sometimes when we want to be home, we want to know that we are home. But circumstances intervene. Some are cast down even today, like many young people who are not accepted by their parents for their lifestyle. Some are removed from pastoral roles in churches because they're gay. Some face potential threats and real threats of violence, even from the police and even in their own cities, because they're black. And some families will likely experience greater exclusion from the American dream of equality because of political influences on economic life. They may have lost jobs or be temporarily homeless. Though some may come out of hiding to take their place in American family of things, in the words of Mary Oliver, others who are undocumented will remain in the shadows, never fully at home. Children and families affected daily by the refusal of our nation to live out the promise of the words on the Statue of Liberty, calling them the homeless, the tempest-tossed. So what is home? Not always a house, not always one place. It's about whose we are and where we are, where and with whom we feel that deep sense of welcome and belonging and rootedness. It's a present reality, or it's a present memory, or an archetype that buried deep within our being that tells us when we're not at home and resonates within us, letting us know when we are at home. And this year, if we're lucky, we'll gather for one holiday or another, or just be with those we love, building on happy memories of winter days, Christmas, Hanukkah, solstice. Recreating customs or blending customs we bring to families we create. Lucky are those who find a home with a loved one or loved ones this December. Lucky are those who, though for years hid relationships in closets, can now be legally married. And if we're intentional this year, we can foster and nurture nurture home with love and tenderness for the treasured things that we've saved, the belongings that are part of our sense of belonging, caring with love and tenderness for the people who love us, remembering that if home is in Connecticut or Montana or in a smelly stable like Mary and Joseph or someplace else, our larger home is the earth. And we can choose to offer a gift for the healing of the earth this winter. We can de-emphasize consumerism. We can emphasize values of love and justice and sustainability and our interdependence with our earth home. And we can, by our presence here, by our openness to all who come into our doors seeking friendship, wanting community, all who are on a journey of the Spirit, by welcoming who they are, by being who we are, we can create a welcome for those wanderers among us who are seeking to know that we are at home. By our awareness and compassion, may we live out the principles of our faith this Christmas season. The spirit of love, the commitment to justice and equity for all, taking the time, in the words of Jesus, to feed the hungry by supporting organizations like food banks. May we help the temporarily homeless by supporting missional communities and facilities with our gifts and our service. May we speak out for justice for prisoners, many of whom the justice system does not treat without bias. May we speak up for immigrants seeking to keep their families together, to make a home in a foreign land. May we speak out for the young and for the old, who often can't find safety or feel at home in their own neighborhoods and cities. May we speak up for economic justice in the face of opposing political wind. May we remember the soldiers who are unable to come home for Christmas. May we remember those among us who are far from home, who are lonely at this time of year, by inviting them to share at least some conversation or coffee or tea. You see, the Christmas story calls us to love and justice. For Jesus, loved at birth, became, if anything at all, a man who taught us to stretch the bounds of love beyond family, beyond tribe, beyond city, beyond country. He remembered, it seems, that we are all members of one family, the human family. So this December, this Christmas season, may we live with that memory in our hearts, and may we finally rejoice at being home.